So we're going to start today about talking about nomenclature, and that's how we write our formulas and determine names for compounds that we use in class. So just like with a neutral atom, the net charge of a neutral atom is 0. We want the net charge of a compound to be 0 as well. So we have our cations, our positive charged ions. They've lost electrons, remember. And our anions, they have negative charge. They've gained electrons. And we want to combine them together. We have to have positives with our negatives. So what we do is we're going to look their values of their ions up on our periodic table. And for the most part, they're all written in there. So if we were to look up magnesium, we would see that it is in a group, the column, that has a 2 positive charge. Chlorine has a charge of 1 negative. Now, just like in math class, we can assume that if there's no number in front of the negative sign, it just means a 1. So the easiest way to combine these two, and we need them in whole number ratios, is to take and cross their numerical value. So the 2 gets put after chlorine, the 1 gets put after magnesium. So this is called the crisscross method. So you get a formula of Mg1Cl2. Now again, we don't have to write the 1, we don't need to, and we won't write it. So we simplify it to be MgCl2. And we've now written the formula for the combination of magnesium and chloride. 1 magnesium for every 2 chlorides, and it has to do with their charges. Okay, if we were to look up aluminum, you would see it's in a group that has a 3 positive charge. Sulfur is in a group with a 2 negative charge. So when we combine them together, we crisscross, and we get Al with a 2, S with a 3. So this is making sure that when we add their charges together, that the net charge of this atom is 0. And just to prove that, you have 2 aluminums. Each aluminum is a 3 positive. And you have 3 sulfurs. Each sulfur is a 2 negative. 2 times positive 3 is 6. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And it adds up to 0. So we did crisscross it correctly, which I hope we should have done anyway. All right, so let's move on. It's not always going to be that simple. So we're going to start with what are called type 1 compounds. Type 1 compounds are cations, the positive, the metal, that we know the charge of. So when we name an ion, the cation, the name is just the same. We just add the word ion. So for example, if we're talking about the calcium ion, Ca2+, you would call it calcium ion. Only if it's by itself, even if it has the charge written. The anion, you're going to take the original ending, and you're going to replace that ending with IDE. So chlorine, Cl1 negative, becomes chloride. P3 negative is phosphide. S2 negative is sulfide. So sulfur, you take off the UR. Phosphorus, you take off the ORUS. So there's a little bit of playing with their endings to make it sound pretty. Again, their charges are coming from looking at the periodic table. So when we name the compound, we want to write that cation first because it is the first atom listed in its formula. And then you write the anion's name with the IDE ending. So Mg and Cl2. So Mg is called magnesium. You leave off the ion because now it's part of a compound. The Cl2, I'm just worried about what Cl is called. I don't care that there's 2 of them. The 2 is there to make sure the net charge is 0. So this is magnesium, and then you call that chloride. Spelling does count. Okay, if we were going to do it for Al2S3, again, we're worrying about their names, not the numbers after them. Al is aluminum, and S is sulfide. Okay, so let's see what we got coming up next. All right, so here you go. There's 8 formulas. Extra credit tomorrow if you can write the names of these 8. All I'll ask is turn in extra credit, and that'll be your key. If you want to get 8 points extra credit on quarter 1, you can turn in these 8 names. Okay, give you a second. Take a minute if you want to pause it so you can write them down. I'm going to move on, though. All right, so let's write their formulas now. So this is going backwards. The formula always contains a symbol and possibly some numbers. You want to look up their charges, and then you want to crisscross the charges. And if any of the subscripts are multiples of each other, like they're both a 2, you reduce the subscripts. So if we take example number 1, sodium chloride. So sodium is Na, and on my periodic table, it's in group that has a 1 positive charge. Chloride, well, that comes from chlorine, so Cl. And I look chlorine up on the periodic table, and it has a 1 negative charge. You have to do this step first. You have to look it up on the periodic table, and then you get to crisscross. So I want you to get in the habit of writing both of these down. Eventually, there will come a time where you can do this on your own without even thinking. All right, so I'm going to crisscross, and I get NaCl, Na1Cl1. You don't need those, remember. So if you have to, write that first, and then simplify even further. NaCl, table salt. That's what we shake on our food. All right, number 2, calcium oxide. Calcium Ca. I looked this up on my periodic table. Ca has a 2 positive charge. Oxide. Oh, that's oxygen. Oxygen is in a group that has a 2 negative charge. So when I crisscross, show that for you, it becomes Ca2O2. Okay, so here's the example of reducing. You've got a 2 of each. We reduce, we divide by 2, simplify just like you would simplify a fraction, and you get CaO. Okay, last one, zinc phosphide. Zinc. Now, zinc's not in a group that has a number at the top. But if you find zinc, zinc is element 30, you'll notice at the very top corner of its box on the periodic table, it has a 2 positive charge. Zinc's in an area where you have to figure out what the charge is. But zinc itself only has 1 charge possible. So it's 2 positive. All right, phosphorus. Phosphorus, when I look that up, it is in group with a 3 negative. So I crisscross, applesauce it, and I get Zn3P2. All right, so we're going to stop for there. We're going to pick it up with type 2 compounds, which are all the ones that don't have a charge listed. That's where we're going to pick up in class tomorrow. Remember, don't forget to do those extra credit problems.